Are there any nominations? Honourable Minister Sala.
I'd like to nominate Emily Cross as chair.
Emily Cross has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Cross, will you please take the chair?
Our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister?
I'd like to nominate Emily Oxenham as vice chair.
Emily Oxenham has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, Emily Oxenham is elected vice chairperson. Just continue. This meeting has been called to consider the following bills. Bill number 6, the Manitoba Assistance Amendment Act. Bill number 8, the Safe Access to Abortion Services Act. Bill number 11, the Statutes and Regulations Amendment and Interpretation Amendment Act. Bill 14, the Minor Amendments and Corrections Act 2024. Bill 15, the Credit Unions and Case Populaire Amendment Act. Bill 19, the Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act. Bill 20, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act. Bill 24, the Intimate Image Protection Amendment Act, distribution of fake intimate images. I would like to inform all in attendance of the provisions in our rules regarding the hour of adjournment. A standing committee meeting to consider a bill must not sit past midnight to hear public presentations or to consider clause by clause of a bill, except by unanimous consent of the committee. Prior to proceeding with public presentations, I would like to advise members of the public regarding the process for speaking in a committee. In accordance with our rules, a time limit of 10 minutes has been allotted for presentations, with another 5 minutes allowed for questions from committee members. Questions shall not exceed 30 seconds in length, with no time limit for answers. Questions may be addressed to presenters in the following rotation. First, the minister sponsoring the bill. Second, a member of the official opposition. And third, an independent member. If a presenter is not in attendance when their name is called, they will be dropped to the bottom of the list. If the presenter is not in attendance when their name is called a second time, they will be removed from the presenters list. The proceedings of our meetings are recorded in order to provide a verbatim transcript. Each time someone wishes to speak, whether it be an MLA or a presenter, I first have to say the person's name. This is a signal for the Hansard recorder to turn the mics on and off. All right, our first presenter is Kate Keller from the Social Planning Council of Winnipeg, and she is joining us virtually.
Am I waiting for my name or do I start?
Yes, just 1 second.
Perfect, thank you.
Sorry about that. Kate, please proceed with your presentation.
Oh, of course. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for very much for the opportunity to speak with you tonight on the necessity of implementing Bill 6, the Manitoba Assistance Amendment Act. As some of you may know, I represent an organization with 105 years of experience working to create a better city and province for all. Our current vision statement is for sustainable community that is just, equitable, and caring. I will be highlighting 2 specific areas of our work, child and family poverty in Manitoba, as well as the data from the Winnipeg street censuses, in order to support our argument for the adoption and full implementation of Bill 6 as quickly as possible. I will also bring my previous experience with the John Howard Society of Manitoba to the discussion as well. It has long been a call from community-based organizations that support people on EIA and social justice advocates concerned that the current emphasis of EIA on finding employment, any employment, can trap individuals into low-paying jobs. While Manitoba has made some progress on increasing minimum wage, it is still not a living wage. Someone, especially a full-time working parent, should not have to rely on food banks, for example, and yet Harvest Manitoba's most recent Voices report notes women who remain the predominant leaders of single-parent families are more likely to access food banks and work more part-time, lower-paying jobs when compared to men. They are more likely to face food insecurity due to factors such as a lack of accessible childcare and flexible work opportunities that can accommodate caregiving responsibilities. Higher education is the answer to this problem. Be it in trades or academic degrees, education opens opportunities for higher incomes and can move people from beyond cycling in and out of the EIA system because they cannot make ends meet on a minimum wage job they were forced to take or risk being deemed ineligible by their worker. It must also be noted that EIA rates still only put individuals at about 40% of the poverty line. So by extending EIA to people pursuing an education is hardly offering them the easy way out. As I mentioned, SPCW is turning 105. When we were approaching our 100th anniversary, we were looking back over our history and we found some records of discussions of government legislation dating back to the early 1920s. That legislation was talking about what to do about the problem of unmarried and gasp pregnant women. It was generally agreed that something had to be done, but what they very clearly spelled out is it shouldn't be too much because they didn't want to quote unquote encourage that behavior. And unfortunately, that's continued to be our thinking. It's our society's thinking, and therefore it's reflected in our government policies that we continue to think that we can punish people out of poverty. It didn't work back then, and it hasn't worked in the last 100 years. Do people succeed and move on from EIA? On their own, of course, but that is usually in spite of the system and not because of it. And when we start talking about the intergenerational poverty, it's just that much more difficult. I mentioned Harvest earlier. They are a longtime partner on the Campaign 2000 annual report cards on child and family poverty in Manitoba. The most recent data, 2021, based on the CF Lim after-tax poverty measurement, demonstrates that Manitoba, while having quote unquote beat out our long history of being the province with the highest rates of child and family poverty by Saskatoon in 2021, but only by a mere 0.2%. We are still the province, though, with the highest rates of child poverty for children under the age of 6. 27% of Manitoba's children under the age of 6 lived in poverty. That is a full 11% higher than the overall rate for Canada. Why am I talking about children when we are talking about adult education? Adding it to EIA, because our most recent Campaign 2000 reports highlight the health, physical, and mental harms done by even short stints in poverty as a child. Preterm and low birth weight babies are too. Thank you. Doubling the healthy baby prenatal benefit will help with that. However, dental extractions are also high, pointing to food insecurity as children move beyond infancy. Our reports also speak to the cognitive damage done to brain development through the toxic stress caused by poverty. The most telling statistic in our report is that teenagers in the lowest income quintile are more than 4 times more likely to die by suicide than the other 4 quintiles combined. My point being that we are damaging our children by allowing the depth and breadth of poverty we have, and so we owe it to those children who have grown into adulthood in poverty to do everything we can to help them catch up. And the good news is they can. People can recover, but they need the appropriate supports and that light at the end of the tunnel to keep them moving forward. As an additional note, all 3 Winnipeg Street censuses that we have been involved in, 2015, 2018, and 2022, all demonstrate that the vast majority of Winnipeg's unsheltered population are Indigenous. Campaign 2000 reports and countless others demonstrate that Indigenous people are overrepresented in poverty. Family breakdown and child and family services involvement are also cited as reasons for people becoming unsheltered, and 18 is still the most common age people first become homeless. So the aging out of care and into being unsheltered is an ongoing concern. Voices Manitoba Voices, Manitoba's Youth and Care Network, also partnered on our most recent reports. And according to them, Bill 6 could be a game changer. To quote, too many of our youth graduate the CFS system without graduating high school and need time, support, and financial stability in order to complete grade 12 or a GED. Those who do complete high school before aging out would like to see a way to pursue higher education. Unquote. Bill 6 will contribute to Canada's Youth and Care Network network's equitable standards framework by supporting its first pillar, financial stability. Every young person, to quote, every young person should have the financial resources required to meet their needs. Youth in care deserve to have a financial starting point that is above the poverty line and allows them to pursue their career interests and dreams. So Bill 6, while does not get them to the starting point of above the poverty line, and we can talk about that later, but it could provide a path to higher income jobs. Bill 6 would also contribute to achieving many of the goals outlined in the previous government's Poverty and Education Task Force report, especially in the overarching theme of the need for equity in education, as that should include addressing the long-term effects of poverty on people's educational trajectory. I would also, just a little bit of information from my time when I was at the John Howard Society of Manitoba. Obviously, we offered literacy programming, and we knew at that time that the vast majority of the people we worked with had about a literacy level average of grade 8. So there is need for folks exiting institutions to actually also be on social assistance and actually also be provided with the support so they can continue their education. Because what we know through our reintegration program and the bail program when we were there, when we take people and we drop them right back into the exact same social conditions that led them to be susceptible to crime in the first place, we're just repeating that. It's a disaster. It's just a disaster waiting to happen, and we continue down this road. So instead of focusing on bail reform, and should legislation come forward, I'd be happy to speak more on that. But I just wanted to make that point that this is one way we could actually stop people from exiting institutions and unfortunately picking up and where they had left off. So finally, while I've spoken on why Bill 6 is essential for people in poverty, this should not be the only lens we use. I know this is odd coming from me. However, someone was in a decent paying job but lost that position or found that it was no longer a good fit for a multitude of reasons. Why would we want to deny that person the opportunity to retrain or achieve a higher education while they figure out life's next steps? No society has ever fallen apart because its population is too well educated. It is societies who allow ignorance and discrimination to prevail that do. We need to encourage more education so that everyone has the critical thinking and reasoning skills needed in our complex world. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Honourable Minister Fontaine.
Miigwech, I just wanted to say a profound miigwech and appreciation to Kate Keller and all of the really important and critical work that you do. Obviously, as you know, I am a huge fan of the work that you do, and I think that you are just a pillar of the community. And I really want to just lift up the analysis that we can't punish people out of poverty. And that is a core principle and tenet of our government, that we will deal with the root causes of why folks come into conflict with the law, and also put those legislative measures and those social policy measures that lift people and help work with people to get them out of poverty. So I just want to say miigwech for all of the work that you do.
Thank you. Any other questions? Sorry, Kate, you have a chance to respond.
I just wanted to say thank you very much for those kind words. They're very much appreciated. I know I come to this organization after as I said, a very, very long history of some incredible work.
Mrs. Stone?
Thank you, Kate, for taking time out of your evening to speak tonight. I'm sorry if you're having trouble hearing me. I'm just getting over a cold here. But in your comments, you had mentioned, the challenges of, how this current system traps individuals and vulnerable individuals into low-paying jobs. So we're facing a, critical skilled labor shortage here in Manitoba. So from your expertise and experience, what do you find the biggest educational skills gaps or skills training gaps that exist right now that you think this bill can help mend?
Kate?
Sorry, you've said my name now? Sorry
Yes,
about
go
that.
ahead, sorry.
Thank you. So I am actually not an expert on the labor force, so I don't want to offer too much about that. Another speaker after me might actually have better information on that than I do. I would just say that, I know it seems like the soft answer, but when you're dealing with folks, especially folks in poverty who have had so much of their agency taken away, that I wouldn't like to actually have to then decide that this is the job you need to take, or you need to take this sort of education. We need to give people back agency. Let them, again, just learn how to learn, and then they will be able to move forward in it with something that is their passion. That's something that they can then succeed in.
Thank you, Kate. Are there any other questions? Hearing none, then I would like to call on our next presenter, Mr. Josh Brandon from Make Poverty History Manitoba, who is also joining us virtually. Mr. Brandon, feel free to start when you're ready.
May I begin?
Ready if you are.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. I'm here representing Make Poverty History Manitoba. We're a coalition of organizations and individuals working towards ending poverty in Manitoba. And we're pleased to support Bill 6, the Assistant Amendment Act, as a small but important step towards minimizing the effect of poverty and working to address the difficult cycles of poverty that our current social systems keep far too many people trapped in. Make Poverty History Manitoba conducted consultations with the community last year ahead of the provincial election to ask people who have experience in a diversity of fields, frontline experience, people with lived experience with poverty, policy advocates, what are the key measures that government should adopt to mitigate poverty and work towards ending poverty? And we ask people to consider policy changes for solutions that touch people the most who are in the deepest poverty, and also recognize the inequitable distribution of poverty in the province and the need for policies to address those groups that are hardest hit by poverty, including Indigenous people, newcomers, people with disabilities, children, women, and people from gender diverse communities. And through that process, we developed a platform of 10 key areas the government should focus on. And I've had a chance to share this whole larger platform in other fora, and I won't touch on all our demands here. But one of the key relevant areas in our demands for Manitoba is to invest in programs that support the educational pursuits of residents of all ages. And this is critical because we know that few Manitobans are able to escape poverty if they are not given the tools to be successful in their educational pursuits. To quote Justice Murray Sinclair, "Education got us into this mess, education will get us out." And so the poverty and education can unfortunately create a feedback loop that it's difficult to escape. Low-income families face barriers to educational success, including poor housing, overwork, fewer benefits, lack of income, and often fewer models of academic achievement in their own families or communities. And so we know that education for all Manitobans is increasingly a lifelong process. And that's why we're promoting an education system that encompasses all stages of life, including early learning, K-12, post-secondary, and adult education. Concerning adult education, our report listed 3 demands. Firstly, double the annual budget for adult literacy and learning, which is flat currently and less than 1% of what we currently are spending on K-12 education, and less than a per capita basis on what we spend on our prison system. To double the annual budget would only cost an additional $20 million. We also said ensure that Manitoba income support program switches from a work-first orientation to an adult education approach wherever possible, to support recipients to improve literacy and education levels. And this current bill touches on that demand directly. And then the third demand was to move rapidly towards the creation of adult learning hubs, which would combine adult learning centers, adult literacy programs, and a child care center. Many in need of adult basic education have young children, and the availability of childcare would be an important part of that. According to the Manitoba government's own reports, there are currently 192 Manitobans between the ages of 18 and 65 who lack literacy levels to enable them to participate fully in society. And addressing this gap is an important part of the process of reconciliation, recognizing overrepresentation of Indigenous people in poverty and the high demand for adult education within Indigenous communities in Winnipeg and across Manitoba. We also know newcomers in Manitoba often require additional supports due to language barriers, interrupted schooling, and discrimination they face in employment and education systems. The proposed amendment to the Assistance Act will make education more available for people who need it most, including those on EIA, by making it a requirement for the department to consider adult education as an employment enhancement measure. This meets the principle that adult education and literacy is a key pathway out of poverty for people living on EIA, and also recognizes the need that the transition from EIA into employment needs to be sustainable. Unfortunately, the current approach too often requires EIA recipients to focus on finding jobs that are not sustainable, for which they have insufficient job readiness or lack the skills for, and this approach is not working. More than 37,000 families representing 62,523 individuals relied on the EIA program last year. Of these, only 2,662 or 4% reported employment income. For some individuals on EIA, it may be a stopgap program to provide some additional support while they find employment. However, for far too many, it is a trap that keeps people within a debilitating system of poverty. We are hopeful that the change of approach represented by this bill is the right one and will have positive effects to allow more people in EIA to successfully leave the program with the skills they need to participate fully in society. While this measure is important, it's also important to recognize that the low level of income support in the program is also a barrier to educational attainment. We know that the levels of assistance provided by the program are inadequate to meet basic needs. According to data collected by the Maitrey Foundation, households relying on EIA have incomes far below the poverty line and generally below the level classified as deep poverty. For individuals on EIA general assistance, total incomes were only 40% of the poverty line last year. And people with disabilities were little better off at only 55% of the market basket measure. In fact, the levels of EIA and rent assist announced this year, total incomes for EIA recipients will drop further in 2024. When we consider inflation, calculating real incomes for people on EIA, we calculated that incomes have dropped 10% since 2018. So we'd like to see an EIA basic needs system, EIA transform its basic needs program into a level that at least meets the market basket measure with an aim of transforming towards a basic livable income and a benefit that all Manitobans can have the dignity they deserve. As a first step, the government should consider with this bill increasing supports for individuals in employment enhancement programs, including all those in adult education, in order to maximize their chances of success. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
Miigwech, Josh, Brandon, I appreciate the time that you've taken to share things that we need to consider and things that are in your report. I also just want to acknowledge you for all the work that you do as an anti-poverty activist and an activist on a myriad of different fronts. I know that we see you at many, many different functions, challenging every government, no matter who's in government, to do better. So I just want to acknowledge you on that. Miigwech.
Mr. Brandon?
Thank you, Mr. Fontaine, for your kind comments, and I look forward to continuing to be an advocate for these issues.
Any other questions? Mrs. Stone?
No, I also just wanted to say thank you very much for taking the time out of your night and clearly for your passion and your experience in this area as well. It was a very thorough presentation and appreciated learning more about it. So thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no other questions? Sorry, I apologize. Would you like to respond, Mr. Brandon?
Again, just thank you very much for your comments, and I hope that the information I provided will be useful in your deliberations today.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to our next presenter. I will now call on Jim Silver from the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives of Manitoba. Please proceed with your presentation, Mr. Silver.
Thank you very much. So I'm here on behalf of the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives. I'd like to admit into the proceedings 2 reports on adult education that some of you will have seen before. This amendment is one of the recommendations that we've made in work that we've been doing on adult education, and I'm delighted with it. This is a really important step forward. Up until now, in EIA, there's been a what's called a work first approach, which means that when somebody is an EIA recipient, the worker tries to push her or him as quickly as possible into the paid labor force to drive down the numbers of those who are on EIA. Whether they're prepared to go into the workforce or not, often they are not fully prepared. It doesn't work very well. They get a job that doesn't lift them out of poverty. Sometimes they quit their job out of frustration because they're not getting ahead with it, and it's just another failure that sets them back. What this amendment does is to shift us from a work-first approach to an education wherever possible approach. Not everybody on EIA can succeed in the mature high school program, but many can. And many are knocking on the doors of adult learning centers wanting to do their mature high school, to get their diploma. And in many, many cases, they're being turned back because in the regulations, it says that EIA recipients can go into education under exceptional circumstances only. It's a work-first approach. It's an anti-education approach. This amendment changes that, and that's a wonderful thing. It's going to mean that lots of people are going to get their grade 12. Many of those who get their grade 12 will go on to further education. They'll go into the paid labor force. They'll pull themselves out of poverty. We have lots of evidence that when mom or dad are in adult education, their kids do better in school. Presumably that's because mom's doing her homework at the kitchen table after supper, and the kids see that and they figure, education's a pretty good deal. So this is important for individuals who will pull themselves out of poverty and for families that are in poverty. It's really, really hard work to complete a high school diploma when you're 33 years old and have 3 kids, or you're 37 or you're 29 or whatever the case may be. It is extremely difficult. So what we're talking about here is creating the opportunity for people on EIA to really bust themselves to get their mature high school diploma. These aren't people who are lollygaggling about. These are people who want to improve their circumstances and their family circumstances by doing the hard work that is necessary. I think it's important to note that the amendment says, when deciding on employment enhancement measures for an applicant or recipient, the director of EIA, must consider whether adult education is the most appropriate employment enhancement measure. So the word must is really important here. It seems to me it's equivalent to the word shall. It's not the word may, it's the word must. In other words, what we're saying here, it seems to me, with this amendment is every case must be looked at with an eye to whether that EIA recipient can succeed in high school, whether she or he wants to, and whether they're capable of doing so. It'll also be important to change the wording in the regulations and in the EIA administrative manual. The regulations are full of work first, and the administrative manual is full of work first. They are anti-education documents, education in exceptional circumstances only. So I think that it's going to be important to change the regs and to change the administrative manual to make it consistent with this amendment to the Act. It will also be important that the director of EIA meet with the frontline workers. It's the frontline workers ultimately who make decisions about whether an EIA recipient can go to school or cannot go to school. They need to be instructed by the director that things have changed. There's an amendment to the Act, and they must consider whether this particular recipient can go to a mature high school program or, in some cases, to a literacy program. So adult education, adult basic education in this province, the adult learning centers that offer the mature high school diploma, and the adult literacy programs that prepare people to take high school courses, it's fabulous. It works really, really well. It produces lots of graduates. From a budget point of view, it's been flatlined for decades by both parties. We need to change that. We recommended a doubling of the budget this year. The budget is $20 million, really small potatoes in a big budget like Manitoba's. I know there's many demands, budgetary demands, but this is a transformative thing, adult education. It transforms people's lives and families' lives. It's an anti-poverty initiative. It pulls people and their families out of poverty. It's part of reconciliation, which is important in this province particularly, because Indigenous people are represented in adult education programs at about 2.5 times their share of the population. And it's about the labor shortage. It's producing workers. It's producing skilled workers, which we need in this province. So this is a very important amendment. I'm delighted that this amendment is before us, and I hope it will get all party support when it goes back to the House. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Silver. Before proceeding to questions, there are only 2 copies of Mr. Silver's reports, and they are quite lengthy. Is there will of the committee for the clerk to scan these and upload them to the MLA portal instead of making copies? Agreed. Agreed, and so ordered. We will now move to questions. Are there any questions? Minister Fontaine.
Really fast here because I have 30 seconds. I just want to lift you up for all of the work that you literally in Manitoba are an OG in respect of all of the anti-poverty, anti-racism work, reconciliation work. You are just, I honor the work that you do on behalf of everybody here in Manitoba. And I really want you to know that I have some of my departmental staff who have taken notes in respect to some of the recommendations on the regs and the administration manual, so changing the language there, and also writing down about the director meeting with the front line. So I really do appreciate those recommendations. And again, once again, Miigwech, so much for your work.
Mr. Silver?
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Stone?
Yeah, I also just want to say thank you for taking the time to come and present to us tonight, and I look forward to reading the report that you've brought to us tonight, so thank you.
Mr. Silver, any?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? All right, thank you, folks. We are now going to move to presentations for Bill number 8. And we have David Grant, who is joining us virtually. Mr. Grant, are you there? Yeah. Mr. Grant, can you make sure that your mic and your video is on, please?
Okay, I'm unmuted and my video is on. Is that okay?
We can't see your video, but we can hear you now. Oh, now we can see you. Or we
Couldn't
could.
hear you.
Now it went off again.
Oh,
There you go. All right.
hi. Anyway, sort of new
Please
to this.
proceed.
I've been to the ledge before, but not for this. So excuse my clumsiness. Anyway, on Bill 8, this bill has a noble cause, and my background is I strongly support the rights to obtain abortions, but I'm concerned about the bill, the wording. A large number of abortions in Manitoba are chemical in nature and depend on imported pharmaceuticals. We know that the enemies of abortion try to restrict the supply of those pharmaceuticals. And so I'm concerned that the bill does not ensure that the supply chain goes uninterrupted so that the bill can have the effect that it's supposed to. So just a suggestion that maybe it should go in that direction. If protesters are kept several meters away and they're limited in numbers, safety can be assured. By outlining visual clues of disapproval, Bill 8 ventures far from safety and into denial of what some would call human rights. We know that the city has occasionally done this when it forbids use of a road by anybody not on a bike, that sort of thing. So just concerned that we tread lightly on rights. Thank you. That's all I had to say on 8.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions? All right, Mrs. Cook?
Thanks for taking time out of your evening to join us here tonight.
Mr. Grant, any comments?
No, nothing further. I've got 2 more bills here, but thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we will now move on to Bill 15. And Mr. Grant is also presenting on Bill 15. So whenever you're ready, Mr. Grant, please proceed.
Yes, thank you. On 15, the removal of a person from a business when they're presenting a problem for those in the business, physically removing them, can be done now without Bill 15. And it's obviously the law, civil law, is intended to protect us from unruly people or those who present an infection danger. But removing a person from membership in a membership-based financial institution, I'm a member, but I don't have a mortgage, etc. with them. I believe this could ruin a person financially. And this fact puts requirements on the Act to draw solid lines between trivial insults and actual threats to life. And I think that's something that should be in it, some kind of guidance for when it's expected that a person would be removed from membership in their credit union. Because it has to be, I would expect it should be something fairly serious, not failure to wipe your hands with the squirt bottle as you come in. But that's my comment on 15. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Are there any questions from the floor? Mr. Sala?
I just want to thank you for taking time to come share your concern, and appreciate you making time in your evening here. Thank you.
Mr. Grant?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that. Somebody's making noise here. I'll try to turn up my mic.
Mr.
hoping to
Sala, would
try
you like
again.
to repeat that?
Just wanted to thank you for taking time to be here tonight.
Mr. Grant?
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing no other questions, we are going to move on to Bill number 19. And Mr. Grant is also presenting on Bill number 19. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Grant, please proceed with your presentation.
Thank you. 19 adds heavy-duty trailers to the vehicles that can be declared unsafe and unfit by authorities. It seems like a good idea. But it does remind us all that MPI has, in the opinion of some, been abusing safety rules to advance its own corporate causes and predilections. Some of which these rules pushed are completely unrelated to the danger that a vehicle might pose to the public. Examples are numerous, and the carefully maintained and rare vehicle that suffers slight hail damage to its easily replaced trim is declared unfit based only on age. It is time to bring MPI to account, in my opinion, for the cost of some of its policies when they cannot be linked logically to road safety. And that's something I think should be done here, because I could see them doing the same thing for a certain brand of trailer where it presents no safety issue, but it can still be declared unfit forever. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Are there any questions for Mr. Grant? All right, Minister Weeb, please proceed.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Grant. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here this evening. I think it sounds to me like we're on the same page with regards to the importance of safety and the importance to focus on that, and the importance of getting MPI back on track, which has been a major goal and endeavor of this government so far. We're going to keep working on it. There's a lot to get right, but keeping rates affordable and getting MPI back on track is absolutely a focus of this government. So thanks for your time.
Mr. Grant?
And thank you very much, Minister. At the open house in December, I did get the card for your assistance, and I would like to follow up in a couple of ways because, as you pointed out, we both share a goal of making Manitoba roads safer and fixing MPI. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grant. Are there any other questions? Mr. Panouk?
Oh, thanks, Mr. Grant, for your presentation, and thanks for coming here tonight to give us this information. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. Grant?
I didn't catch that. Could it be said louder?
Sorry, yes, Mr. Panouk.
Sorry, I'm actually at the end of the role here. Thanks, Mr. Grant, for your presentation and coming here tonight to present and to give us the information. I know the value, we all value the safety. I was the minister at one time of transportation infrastructure, and I value your concerns about safety on our highways.
Mr. Grant?
Yes, thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you for your time. That concludes the list of presenters I have before me. In what order does the committee wish to proceed with clause-by-clause considerations of these bills? Minister Fontaine.
Excellent. I suggest that we consider the bills in this order. Bill 15, the Credit Unions and Caisses Populaires Amendment Act. Bill 6, the Manitoba Assistant Amendment Act. Bill 8, the Safe Access to Abortion Services Act. Bill 11, the Statutes and Regulations Amendment and Interpretation Amendment Act. Bill 14, the Minor Amendments and Corrections Act 2024. Bill 19, the Drivers and Vehicles Amendment Act. Bill 20, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act. And Bill 24, the Intimate Image Protection Amendment Act, distribution of fake intimate images. Do you need this?
Is there agreement from the committee to read the bills in the following order? Bills 15, 6, 8, 11, 14, 19, 20, and 24. Agreed. Agreed and so ordered. We will begin with Bill 15. So we will now proceed with clause by clause of Bill 15. Does the minister responsible for Bill 15 have an opening statement? All right, Minister Sala, please proceed.
Thank you so much, Chair. Grateful to have a chance to speak briefly here about Bill 15, the Credit Unions and Caisses Populaires Amendment Act. I know folks here all agree that credit unions and Caisses Populaires play an incredibly important role in our provincial economy here. They have over 43.3 billion in assets, and we know that they have a bigger share of deposits than in any other province or territory in Canada. So we know credit unions are just an incredibly important piece of our financial services sector here in Manitoba. We do know, however, that credit unions are facing increasing headwinds in Manitoba and across the country with the advent of fintechs, AI. Credit unions are facing greater challenges than ever before. And we see that and the pressures that they're facing and the fast rate of consolidation of credit unions here in Manitoba. We had at one point over 60 credit unions only a matter of years ago, and now we're down to about 16 or 16 total. So we see that the pressure sort of manifesting in terms of that pace of consolidation, and that continues to happen today. We should be deeply proud of what this sector has created here in our province, and our government celebrates the important role of credit unions and the Caisses Populaires, and the role that they continue to play in serving Manitobans and providing very important financial services. Part of ensuring that they can continue to succeed is ensuring that we're listening to them and listening to the needs that they have and that they're bringing forward, so we can ensure that they can continue to provide those important services and help to play an important role here in our provincial economy. This bill is one of those responses to us having listened to them, and it was drafted after consultations with the Credit Union Central of Manitoba. It will update several sections in the existing legislation to address a number of issues that have arisen in the operation of credit unions and the Caisses Populaires, and this is particularly in connection to members' meetings. I will just highlight the key changes that this bill brings forward. First, it will permit credit unions to submit proposed bylaw amendments to the provincial registrar in advance for confirmation that they're consistent with legislation, and this will help to avoid situations where credit unions submit bylaw amendments to its members for approval, only later to learn that that bylaw was not permitted with the registrar. It will also no longer permit members to put forward proposals, including the nomination of a director, at meetings of members. And the reason for that is because voting can often happen now in advance of those meetings. So this ensures that all members of a credit union have the appropriate opportunity to vote on proposals. It will also eliminate the ability of members of a credit union to access the register of members with certain exceptions. There's no reason to allow such general access, as this creates significant privacy-related concerns. The bill also clarifies that voting at a meeting of members can be by electronic means, which is, of course, increasingly the way that voting is taking place at meetings, not only in the credit union sector, but of course in all sectors. And the bill will also allow management of a credit union to terminate the membership of a member who's engaging in conduct that is abusive, discriminatory, or threatens the health and safety of others, coupled with a right, and this is very important, of that member to have the termination reviewed by the credit union's board of directors. Of course, termination of membership would only happen in extreme circumstances, and in those circumstances, those members would still have that ability to have, again, that termination reviewed by the board. So in closing, we know that credit unions are, again, a crucial part of our financial services sector. We want to see them thrive. We want to see them continue to succeed. We applaud their contribution to our provincial economy, and we believe the amendments in this bill will help to ensure that they can continue to do that important work.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Khan.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Well, without repeating a lot of what the minister said, I think he did a lot of the overlapping notes there, so I won't go into too much detail on that. But I do want to say it was a pleasure to work on this bill with various credit unions. Curtis Weinberg, President and CEO from Credit Union Central Manitoba. I want to thank him and his team for all the work they had done and the discussions we had around this bill. This bill is an important bill. It is a step in the right direction to support the important work that credit unions do and Caisses Populaires. within the province of Manitoba. And from Ontario, born and raised myself, I hadn't had much exposure to credit unions. And this bill, moving here, you get to hear a little bit about them, but reading this bill in detail and having meetings, you actually see the great work they do. It's vital for Manitoba's economy. So this bill is a step in that right direction. So I'm happy to see this come forward. However, there is a further discussion to be had, and this came up at second reading, and the minister acknowledged this, and I look forward to working with the minister on this as well. It's coming up with further protections and more supports for credit unions. Ontario has brought forward legislation on bank runs to support their ability to compete and ensure broader market stability. That is important with the amount of assets that the credit unions are holding. It's important to enable direct access to Bank of Canada's emergency liquidity facilities. And these are discussions the Minister and I have had, and I look forward to having many more on these on supporting the very important work credit unions and Caisses Populaires do in Manitoba.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is an agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Shall clause 1 through 3 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 1 through 3 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 4 pass?
Pass.
Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 5 through 7 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 5 through 7 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 and 9 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 8 and 9 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Yes.
Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We will now consider clause by clause of Bill 6. Shall clause 1 pass? Oh, sorry, my bad. Does the minister responsible for Bill 6 have an opening statement? Minister Fontaine.
Miigwech, thank you. First and foremost, I just want to once again reiterate my gratitude to all of the folks that came and presented today. I take everything that was said very seriously, and as I said, I do have some of my amazing team here tonight who have been taking notes, and already we are starting to work on some of the recommendations that were brought forward today. So again, miigwech to everybody. Bill 6 will enshrine the rights of Manitobans to access adult education that is appropriate to their personal circumstances in the fulfillment of employment and income assistance, EIA, program requirements. I was very pleased to see broad support for Bill 6 during its second reading on March 7th, 2024. I want to thank my colleagues for their comments, particularly respecting their acknowledgement of the importance of education and training for individuals on EIA who are trying to achieve financial independence and stable employment. The development of the bill was informed by consultations with Manitobans with lifelong expertise in adult education, including Mrs. Fran Taylor, the director of the Seven Oaks Adult Learning Center, and Dr. Jim Silver from the Urban and Inner City Studies from the University of Winnipeg. There will be no requirement to amend regulations because of the passage of this bill. As the participation in employment enhancement measures, it's currently a requirement for many Manitobans participating in the EIA program. A few concerns were raised after Bill 6 received second reading this spring. One concern was that EIA caseloads could increase as a result. I want to emphasize that this bill does not change the eligibility framework for EIA, nor does it substantially change current practice. It simply enshrines adult education as an option for meeting program requirements in legislation. I am pleased we have some presenters that agree with us, and we are looking forward to royal assent of Bill 6. Miigwech.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mrs. Stone.
Yes, thank you very much. And I also want to thank all the presenters for coming today and sharing their expertise and their thoughts. And I look forward to diving in some of the reports that were provided to us at a later date. I know how important it is to give vulnerable Manitobans as much opportunity free of barriers, not just to survive, but to thrive in our society and move towards financial independence. We know that we do have a labor shortage across our province, and we know that skilled labor is one of the most pressing challenges facing sectors like healthcare, manufacturing, and trades industries. It's important that we do protect our adult education system, as it will ensure adults can develop the skills needed to participate fully in the community and contribute to a growing economy. Any sort of adult education has its benefits that stretch far beyond a person's immediate environment or situation. And we need to ensure that we do have the right investments in adult learning and skills training to ensure people in Manitoba have the right skills, talent, and knowledge at the right time to support economic resilience and growth. Thank you.
We thank the member. Okay. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass? Pass. Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass? Pass. Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 4 pass? Pass. Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? Pass. The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? Pass. The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We will now consider clause by clause of Bill 8. Does the minister responsible for Bill 8 have an opening statement? Minister Fontaine.
To say that I am excited about committee tonight and Bill 8 making it through one more obstacle or one more process to receive a royal assent is an understatement. As many folks around the table know that I started introducing this bill, I believe, in 2017. This is the 6th iteration of the bill that I've attempted to have pass. It's never gotten to this point. It's never reached past second reading. So I am very, very excited and very, very pleased that we're finally here. The purpose of this new act is to protect access to abortion services and to uphold the dignity, security, and fair treatment of patients, healthcare providers, and other health workers. Bill 8 will achieve this by providing safe access zones to prohibit protests and activities meant to harass or influence a person from accessing abortion services or a healthcare provider who provides those services. No single Manitoban should be subjected to intimidation or invasion of privacy based on their personal choice to access a legal health service. I was very pleased and grateful to see the agreement from the opposition on that point during second reading, and I appreciate my critic for her comments. We've received some comments on the bill, and I would just like to take a couple of minutes to address some of them. There was concern that the legislation would unfairly restrict the right of freedom of thought, belief, opinion, or expression. We conducted extensive legal and constitutional reviews to ensure that Bill 8 strikes a justifiable balance between protesters' rights and protecting access to essential health service as a basic human right. I would add Bill 8 is modeled closely on legislation in 5 other provinces and which have all withstood charter challenges. I also want to emphasize Bill 8 does not remove the right of anti-choice Manitobans to protest abortion services. They are welcome to protest as long as they do so outside of an established access zone. And as I have said for the last 6 or 7 years, they are also more than welcome to protest at the Manitoba Legislative Building. Opposition members have asked, why not make the legislation more comprehensive so access to all healthcare services are protected from protests? We explored extending access zones to cover all health services. Our legal advice was very clear. Focus only on measures that are backed up by evidence justifying a reasonable limit on charter rights. It is evident that Manitoba facilities providing abortion services are being targeted by anti-choice protesters. We know anti-choice protesters have engaged in verbal harassment, intimidation, obstruction, and more, which impedes Manitobans' access as well as their safety, security, and privacy. Applying access zones to all health facilities and services where targeted anti-choice protests are not occurring regularly would be an overreach and leave our legislation open to constitutional challenges. As a result, like other provinces, we are taking a narrower approach to create access zones where there is a clear need to do so to ensure that restrictions on freedom of expression are minimized. I also just want to take a quick moment to say miigwech to all of the abortion activists that have supported this, not only here in Manitoba, but certainly across the country, and all of the abortion providers and those that are on the front lines ensuring that Manitobans have access to abortion. This bill is dedicated to you. Miigwech.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mrs. Cook, please proceed.
I just have a few comments. Initially, my intentions were to amend this bill. I wanted it to be more comprehensive in terms of protecting all Manitoba patients and all Manitoba healthcare workers at all Manitoba healthcare facilities. And I worked with Ledge Council over an extended period of time, but it became clear that an amendment such as what I would like to propose would be considered out of scope. I want to put on the record that I think it's still possible to take a more even-handed and different approach to this bill. I don't believe the government should be picking winners and losers when it comes to who can access healthcare facilities without wading through protesters, or which protests are acceptable, or who can protest where. I still believe that that should apply evenly across the board. I think all Manitobans should be able to access all healthcare facilities, no matter what they're going there for, safely, comfortably, and that goes for healthcare workers too. And I said this during second reading, and I want to repeat it here so that there's no opportunity to misconstrue my comments or my intent. I believe that abortion services are healthcare services. And I really believe that it's not government's job to decide which protests are acceptable and which ones are not, and that I wish that this bill was more even-handed and took a more fair approach to protests across the board at all healthcare facilities. I appreciate the minister's comments and her explanation and, attempting to address those concerns in her opening statement. Thank you.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the preamble, the enacting clause, and the titles are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Shall clause 1 pass? Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 2 and 3 pass? Clauses 2 and 3 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 4 pass? Clause 4 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 5 and 6 pass? Clauses 5 and 6 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 7 pass? Clause 7 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 through 12 pass? Clauses 8 through 12 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 13 and 14 pass? Clauses 13 and 14 are accordingly passed. Shall the preamble pass? The preamble is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass? The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We will now begin clause by clause of Bill 11. Does the minister responsible for Bill 11 have an opening statement? Please proceed, Minister Weed.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and good evening to the members of the committee here this evening. I'm pleased to be here to present Bill 11, the Statutes and Regulations Amendment Interpretation Amendment Act, and bring us through the committee stage. As you will recall, this bill brings forward amendments that are related to keeping the statute book in Manitoba in good order. As previously discussed in the House, the bill deals with 3 matters primarily. Number 1, gender neutrality. Amendments will provide 2 legislative tools for updating the language of acts and regulations to achieve gender neutrality. The Lieutenant Governor and Council is provided with the regulation-making power to make amendments to achieve gender-neutral style in Manitoba's regulations. Amendments also provide the Chief Legislative Council with revision power to replace the exclusive use of masculine or feminine nouns and pronouns, or binary pronouns, with equivalent gender-neutral nouns and pronouns. Number 2, minor amendments and corrections in regulations. These amendments give the Lieutenant Governor in Council a restricted, limited, regulation-making power to make minor or administrative amendments to regulations allowing for efficient updating and corrections of Manitoba's regulations. And number 3, proclamation commencement dates. Amendments to the Interpretation Act will allow for proclamations that bring an act into force be amended or revoked before the coming into force date set out in the original proclamation. I'd like to note that all statutes and regulations will be reviewed by Legislative Council for gender-neutral presentation. As a snapshot of the scope of this project, and in response to members of the committee's questions previously, there are 512 acts and 1,128 regulations in Manitoba that will be reviewed. For example, 94 acts and 34 regulations contain only references to he, and 239 acts and 238 regulations contain references only to he or she. Planning is underway in respect to organizing the review of the project, which will be completed using existing resources with no anticipated additional costs. And I want to thank our Legislative Council team for doing this work. I'd be happy to answer any questions and look forward to passage of this bill.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Balkin.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on this bill that's before us today, committee. I had the opportunity to speak with Leg Council staff that were at the bill briefing, and I would like to thank them for their dedication and the time that will be put through this. We just heard over 500 acts, over 1,000 regulations that they will go through meticulously to make sure that the gender neutrality is brought forward in this bill. I would also like to note that I appreciate this government continuing on the work that our government had started on neutrality on these bills. So with that, those are my opening comments.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed. The bill shall be reported. We will now begin clause by clause of Bill 14. Does the minister responsible for Bill 14 have an opening statement? Minister Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to briefly speak to Bill 14, the Minor Amendments and Corrections Act 2024, better known as MACA, and have it proceed through the committee stage. As you know, there is an annual omnibus bill that is primarily concerned with correcting typographical, numbering, and minor drafting and translation errors in Manitoba's statute book. This bill also contains minor amendments to several acts. Amendments in this bill deal with matters that are identified throughout the year by Legislative Council, government departments, and other users of our legislation. The tracking of amendments suitable for inclusion in MACA is continuous. As soon as the MACA for the current year is introduced, amendments suitable for inclusion in the next MACA are being prepared by Legislative Council. This year, MACA deals with the amendments in 3 separate areas. Part 1 makes French language improvements, updates cross-references, citations, and terminology, and corrects drafting errors to provide clarity and consistency across Manitoba's statute book. Part 2 contains amendments related to the term associate judge. These particular changes were requested by the judiciary to change the French version of the term from juge puîné to juge adjoint. Part 3 makes amendments to statutes at the request of the Law Society to reflect the new French name for the Law Society of Manitoba, to be known as Barreau du Manitoba. I would like to thank the committee for their time and look forward to the passage of this bill.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Balkin.
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity to just put a few quick words on the record for this as the official critic. As we know, this is an annual omnibus bill, and we appreciate the fact that this will go year after year. And again, I would like to reach out and thank the staff from Legislative Services again, because people in the viewing audience and people that are in attendance don't realize the significant work that gets done by this core group of people. So thank you on my behalf. I think it's also important to note to our hundreds or thousands of viewers tonight and our audience here that I learned at the bill briefing and during discussions that it's very important to me is that no substantive changes can happen from this omnibus bill, and therefore I have no concerns with moving this forward. So again, thanks to the Ledge Council, and I look forward to further discussion on this bill at committee.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to parts and pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Shall Part 1 pass?
Pass.
Part 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Part 2 pass?
Pass.
Part 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Part 3 pass?
Pass.
Part 3 is accordingly passed. Shall Part 4 pass?
Pass.
Part 4 is accordingly passed. Shall Schedule A pass?
Pass.
Schedule A is accordingly passed. Shall Schedule B pass?
Pass.
Schedule B is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed, the bill shall be reported. Okay.
Thank you. Great reference.
We will now begin clause by clause of Bill 19.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Never mind.
Scared me. Does the minister responsible for Bill 19 have an opening statement? Minister Wiebe.
Thank you very much. I'm getting too eager here, Madam Chair. I appreciate you reining me in. Bill 19, the Driver and Vehicles Act, currently does not allow Manitoba Public Insurance, or MPI, to designate a trailer as salvageable, irreparable, or rebuilt. With the proposed amendments to the Drivers and Vehicles Act in Bill 19, the provisions dealing with written-off, salvageable, and irreparable motor vehicles would now apply as well to heavy trailers, those with a gross vehicle weight rating over 4,500 kilograms. Based on the definitions used in the Highway Traffic Act, the Drivers and Vehicles Act, and their regulations, anything that references motor vehicles does not include trailers because they are not self-propelled. Currently, trailers automatically receive the same normal status designation after they are repaired or after they are re-registered. This means that trailers that have been written off can be purchased at a salvage auction and re-registered without being subject to an inspection to verify that they are roadworthy. It also means that consumers who subsequently purchase these trailers have no record of their claims history or an accurate estimate of their true value. This situation can also happen to trailers purchased from other jurisdictions and brought to Manitoba, where they receive normal status upon registration. With these proposed amendments, MPI will be authorized to designate trailers with a status that accurately reflects their roadworthy condition and claims history upon registration. The bottom line is that this bill is all about road safety, consumer protection. These are two things that I'm sure that we can all be in support of. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Panouk.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And yes, it's important that we become consistent when it comes to, especially when there's actually claims with certain vehicles, that trailers are a part of that that consistency of knowing exactly the status of any kind of, if that trailer has been in an accident. So it's very important, coming from a MPI background myself, being an insurance agent, I think it's very important to also enhance the basically consumer protection, to make sure that buyer beware of what they're buying is actually classified properly. And just one of the questions of making sure that Carfax is also part of this whole opportunity to give the buyer beware to the consumer. And that's something that I would like to see this clarify through with this minister, just to make sure that that's included in this bill. Thank you.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, The enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 3 and 4 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 3 and 4 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 5 and 6 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 5 and 6 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 7 and 8 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 7 and 8 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 9 and 10 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 9 and 10 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 11 pass?
Pass.
Clause 11 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed, the bill shall be reported. We will now begin clause by clause of Bill 20. Does the minister responsible for Bill 20 have an opening statement?
I do.
Minister Weep.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to bring forward Bill 20, the Highway Traffic Amendment Act. This bill amends the Highway Traffic Act to support the implementation of the Highway Traffic Amendment Act alternative measures for driving offenses, which impose the requirements for individuals dealt with through alternative measures to have an ignition interlock device, in addition to completing an out-of-court impaired driving education and awareness program. The Highway Traffic Act already prevents people from appealing against the ignition interlock requirement itself. However, it does not prevent people from appealing the decision of their license if they refuse to comply with the ignition interlock requirement. Allowing these appeals would enable these individuals to delay the installation of the ignition interlock device with potential public safety implications. The amendment will address the appeal loophole in the alternative measures by allowing Manitoba Public Insurance to immediately implement the ignition interlock requirement for individuals undergoing the alternative measures program without the possibility of reneging on their obligations for full compliance. In this way, the amendment will also keep the License Suspension Appeal Board from hearing frivolous appeals filed by individuals who have agreed to participate in alternative measures to avoid criminal prosecution, but then do not comply with that agreement, and then have their licenses suspended as a result. I hope that there's unanimous support of this bill moving forward. I appreciate the committee's time.
We thank the minister. Does a critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Mr. Balkin.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about this bill because it is something that I am quite concerned about and quite passionate about, being a former law enforcement officer. I spent many years of my career in the traffic section and on general patrol, and would certainly target impaired drivers because I feel that they cause great dangers on our roads, and a very irresponsible act by individuals putting life in jeopardy. So I think this is a very important act to close any loopholes. As we heard from the minister, prevent any frivolous appeals coming before the board. I think this robust program that is often sponsored by Manitoba Public Insurance to have police officers dedicated to what's called road watches and ensure that impaired drivers are taken off the road. Oftentimes, the less serious offenses are put through alternative measures, and the acts are very similar. The punishments are very similar to what would happen if they went through court, but it does save the court time in deferring these cases through the courts. So closing up any potential loophole certainly helps to ensure that the administration of justice is not put into disrepute and people cannot simply thumb their nose at an alternative measures program that is meant to divert them from the court. With those words, thank you very much, Madam Chair.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed, the bill shall be reported. We will now begin clause by clause of Bill 24. Does the minister responsible for Bill 24 have an opening statement? Minister Wiebe.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm pleased to offer a few comments with regards to Bill 24, the Intimate Images Protection Amendment Act. This bill amends the Intimate Images Protection Act, which requires the government to make supports available to assist people who have had or believe they are about to have an intimate image shared without their consent. In addition, the Act established a new civil remedy by allowing for a person whose intimate image was distributed without their consent to sue the person who distributed it. The emergence of AI-generated so-called deep-fake images, which can be hyper-realistic, are a growing concern. It's deeply concerning that someone acting with malicious intent can create a fake intimate image of another person that appears to be genuine. Currently, the Intimate Images Protection Act is limited to actual photographs or actual film or video recordings. Bill 24 expands the definition to include visual recordings that were created or altered using electronic means, including software, machine learning, and other types of AI. The amendments extend access to civil remedies for those who have had these fake images of them shared without their consent. Changes are fully supported by the Canadian Centre for Child Protection and the Uniform Law Conference of Canada. They align with changes made in other jurisdictions, including New Brunswick, BC, Saskatchewan, and PEI. By supporting survivors and giving them additional avenues of recourse, they also align with the priorities of the MMIWG-2S and Gender-Based Violence Committee of Cabinet. This is about supporting women, children, and all those who are victimized by these sexually exploitative images, increasing protections for and empowering victims of these heinous acts. I look for unanimous consent and support of this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
We thank the minister. Does the critic for the official opposition have an opening statement? Mrs. Stone.
Thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to put a few words on the record as it relates to this bill. And, you know, it is of utmost priority for our side of the House that we expand and strengthen and enhance our existing legislation and laws to protect children, women, and vulnerable individuals from sexual exploitation. And I also had a very similar bill on the order paper, and I know that the minister and I have the same end goal in mind, and that is to protect individuals from sexual exploitation. You know, as we've seen, AI-generated images are moving at a very fast pace across the world, not just here in Manitoba or in Canada, but globally. And law enforcement has said that you know, it's expanding at a rate that our laws aren't keeping up with or necessarily keeping up with. We've certainly seen this happen to, you know, stars like Taylor Swift globally, very, very public, but also even within our schools. And so I think it's really important that we have the tools necessary for our educators to not only enforce, but to educate students, staff, educators about the challenges and about the repercussions of sharing AI-generated sexually explicit images. So it's important that we keep that in mind as we move forward. You know, it's important that on all sides of the House that we work together. And this is a nonpartisan issue. This is about protecting individuals from sexual exploitation. And I look forward to this moving into the next legislative process stage.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Shall clauses 1 through 3 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 1 through 3 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 4 through 9 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 4 through 9 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 10 and 11 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 10 and 11 are accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass?
Pass.
The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed. The bill shall be reported. That concludes our bills. The hour being 7:32, what is the will of the committee? Committee rise.